Nick had finally caught up to Ava, as she found herself torn between two completely different truths. One man claimed Nick had murdered her twin brother, the other insisted he'd been framed. Ava couldn't decide who deserved her trust. Alex stepped forward, convinced she'd made the right decision, but before he could finish speaking, Ava quietly walked past him. She thanked him for staying by her side, for comforting her when she needed it most. But if she was going to avenge Andrew, she wanted to do it with her own hands, not someone else's. As the two disappeared into the night, Alec remained seated in silence. Nothing had gone according to plan. He'd tried to provoke Ava, to make her hate Nick, yet somehow, she still chose to hear Nick's side of the story. His own thoughts began turning against him. He remembered asking Ava a simple question. "Do you want me to kill Nick?" The more he replayed her words, the more confused he became. For reasons he couldn't understand, those words left a sting he couldn't ignore. Why did he feel so insulted? Meanwhile, Nick led Ava away from the warehouse. He knew this wasn't the place to reveal the truth, if she was willing to listen. He wanted her to hear everything somewhere safe. Ava silently agreed. But doubt still lingered in her heart. What if Nick was lying? So before beginning, he made her one promise. What she was about to hear would be difficult to believe, but every single word would be the truth, then quietly nodded. Nick's story began years before Andrew's death. Back then, the Caponelli family and the Moretti family weren't sworn enemies. There was competition between them, but also mutual respect. Nick had met Andrew several times over the years, but beyond that, they were never close friends, at least not until one unexpected night changed everything. Later that evening, a loud knock echoed through Nick's home. Confused, he opened the door. Standing outside was Andrew. His breathing was uneven, and fear completely covered his face. Nick couldn't understand why Andrew had shown up in the middle of the night, but before he could send him away, Andrew desperately begged to come inside. He admitted someone was trying to kill him, and at any moment they might succeed. Once inside, Nick demanded an explanation. Andrew finally confessed. He had stolen money from the Italian mafia. After failing a job his father had entrusted to him, he'd panicked, desperate to replace the missing money. He made an even bigger mistake. Now, the Italians wanted to make an example out of him. Nick couldn't believe what he was hearing. Why hadn't Andrew gone to Don Moretti instead? Andrew let out a bitter laugh. His own father would have been the first person to hand him over. After failing such an important assignment, he'd already been warned his life meant nothing, overwhelmed with guilt. Andrew admitted he hated the life he'd been born into, then quietly apologized for dragging Nick into his problems, believing he had nowhere left to turn. He prepared to leave. Nick stopped him. He couldn't involve the Caponelli family directly. That would have started another war, but he also couldn't ignore someone begging for help. Tomorrow, Nick would personally contact Don Moretti, if nothing else. The mafia boss would protect his own son to preserve the family's reputation. Relief washed over Andrew's face. He thanked Nick again and again. Nick simply told him to get some rest. Tomorrow, they would figure everything out together. Hours later, the house had fallen completely silent. Nick was fast asleep, quietly. Andrew stepped into Nick's bedroom without making a sound. He opened the bedside drawer. He took Nick's handgun. Then, barely louder than a whisper, he apologized. "I'm sorry, Nick.